people of Eastern region, your suffering will not end until people of Eastern region, Anang, Efik, Ibibio, Igbo, Ijaw, Ogoja, Ishekiri, Isoko, Ishan, Urobo, and every other group that claims to be a separate ethnicity. We want to make this very, very clear to you. Your suffering in Nigeria will not end until you tell yourself the truth. Take responsibility for your past mistakes and foolishness, and then immediately start fighting for your freedom, for your self-determination, and your survival as a separate political entity, completely and totally separate from Nigeria. The beginning of wisdom is when a proud man or woman can look himself or herself in the mirror and say to himself or herself, quote, "You have behaved foolishly. You really made stupid errors," end quote. Only when someone says that to himself can he or she really begin to make meaningful changes that will lead to correction of those past foolishness or stupid actions. To tell the truth, several political leaders from the ethnic nationalities mentioned above have done very foolish things. In fact, stupid things that put their people today in the terrible state of slavery that the Anang, Efik, Ibibio, Igbo, Ijaw, Ogoja, Ishekiri, Isoko, Ishan, Urobo, etc. find themselves today in Nigeria. Since the 1930s, our political leaders were told in very plain language, in fact, as clearly as anyone could ever ask for, by the Hausa, Fulani, and Yoruba, that they, the Hausa, Fulani, and Yoruba, do not believe in one Nigeria, and that they cared only for the interest of the Hausa, Fulani, and the Yoruba, respectively. In fact, they did not just say it, they acted on it every single time the opportunity presented itself. Yet, our very intelligent political and opinion leaders continued to chase the shadow of one Nigeria, the illusion of a united country called Nigeria. The Hausa, Fulani, and Yoruba exploited the foolishness of our leaders in continuing to believe in one Nigeria to put our people in a state of perpetual slavery and abject poverty. Here are just a few examples. Egbeomo Oduduwa was formed by Chief Obafemi Awolowo and a few other Yoruba intellectuals and politicians. One of the chief reasons for forming the Egbe, which later gave birth to the Yoruba-based political party called Action Group, was, quote, to stop the expanding influence of the Igbo, end quote. The same Chief Awolowo, leader of the Yoruba for several decades, stated openly that he and the Yoruba did not believe in one Nigeria, and stated categorically that Nigeria was, quote, a mere geographical expression, end quote. In the same way, Alhaji Sir Amadu Bello, the Sarduana of Sokoto, head of the most powerful political party in northern Nigeria, the NPC, and leader of the Hausa Fulani in northern Nigeria for several decades, stated categorically that he and his Hausa Fulani people did not believe in the contraption called Nigeria. He stated categorically that the amalgamation of northern and southern Nigeria by the British colonialists was, quote, a mistake, end quote. The same sentiment was echoed by Alhaji Abubakar Tafawa Balewa, another top leader of the Hausa Fulani, who later became the first prime minister of Nigeria. What did the political leaders in the East do in the face of this clear rejection of one Nigeria by the Hausa Fulani and the Yoruba? Dr. Nnamdi Azikiwe, the great Zik of Africa, went to Western Nigeria. He went to Yoruba land and stood for election, and even more importantly, to become the premier of Western region, the homeland of Awolowo and the action group that did not believe in Nigeria. His political party, the Eastern Region-based NCNC, won majority of the seats in the Western House of Assembly. However, overnight, Yoruba members of Azikiwe's own political party, the NCNC, defected to the action group in order to make a Yoruba man become the premier of Western region. Thus, Awolowo, whose political party lost the election, became the premier of Western region. Zik ran back to the east and displaced Professor Eyoita, who was in line to become the premier of Eastern region, thus upsetting and annoying the Efik Ibibio people and sowing the seeds of mistrust and discord between the Igbo and the Efik Ibibio, their brothers. Did Zik learn a lesson? No. Later, he still aligned with the Hausa Fulani to form the federal government, only to be kicked out later by Tafawa Balewa. In retaliation for the injustice done to him, Professor Eyoita joined forces with Awolowo's action group, the same Awolowo who did not believe in Nigeria. That alliance endured for a long time and led to the decision of some leaders in the riverine areas opposing freedom and independence for Biafra and joining forces with the same House of Fulani Yoruba genocidists who had slaughtered thousands of their own people and the Igbo in cold blood all over northern and western Nigeria. Adaka Boro was one of those that joined the Nigerian army to fight Biafra. After he helped the Nigerian army to overrun and occupy the riverine areas, including his hometown, he demanded independence, which he was promised by Yakubu Gowon. Yakubu Gowon and Benjamin Adekunle, the Yoruba commanding officer, ordered him to shut up. When he insisted on what he was promised, Adekunle himself shot and killed Major Adaka Boro. Enahoro, who was being persecuted by the House of Fulani Yoruba federal government of Nigeria before he ran away to London, came back and joined the same government that was waging war of genocide against Biafra. Yakubu Gowon and the House of Fulani Yoruba jihadists made him Minister of Information, and he went all over the world preaching to every government that the people of Biafra had no right to freedom, liberty, and self-determination in the independent nation of Biafra, and that Biafrans should be subjected to starvation until all of them die. That was Enahoro, working with the House of Fulani Yoruba oligarchs and the Sokoto Caliphate to starve to death millions of his own brothers, sisters, in-laws, and friends in Biafra. Today, what has happened to him and his Ishan people? The same House of Fulani Yoruba oligarchs and the Sokoto Caliphate are slaughtering his people, driving them out of their homes, have taken over their land, the mineral resources in it, and the water resources that his people depend on for their survival. And what is he doing about it? He is still talking about one Nigeria, compromising with the House of Fulani Yoruba oligarchs and the Sokoto Caliphate, begging them to build roads, schools, hospitals, water supply for his town. Pathetic. Edwin Clarke loved the House of Fulani Yoruba oligarchs so much that he teamed up with them to fight Biafra and stop his own Ijaw people from having real independence, freedom, liberty, and control over their resources. His hatred of the Igbo was so much that when he was made Commissioner of Information by Shosho boy Yakubu Gowon, his head would almost touch the ground when he bowed and worshipped his god, Yakubu Gowon. Today, his people, the Ijaw, are slaughtered in thousands every month, and the Ijaw communities are wiped out and decimated by his one Nigeria friends. Recently, he begged for amnesty, and the caliphate granted him amnesty. Then, he turned around and started saying to the caliphate Nigerian government that militants who have accepted amnesty are not prisoners and should not be treated as such. Edwin Clarke went to school and got some education. Why has he not bothered to pick up a dictionary and look up the meaning of the word amnesty instead of making a fool of himself?